Today's speakers are Margot Weisz, Product Manager at Simmons Research, and Jen Olson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Simmons Research. Margot Weisz is the product owner of Simmons Local and oversees segmentation and strategic partnership services. Margot has over 10 years of experience working with market research data, consulting clients in the automotive and media vertical before joining product management, where she helps companies realize their product potential. Margot holds a bachelor's degree from DePaul University. Jen Olson serves as Senior Product Marketing Manager at Simmons Research. Jen has over 25 years of experience in media and market research on both the client and vendor sides, and she is passionate about finding new ways to analyze data. Jen holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan and an MBA in Marketing and Information Systems from Fordham. At this point, I'll hand it over to Margot.
Thanks, Allison, and thank you all for joining us today. As you can see right here, local advertising is certainly not going away. According to the measurements on the screen here, according to BIA Kelsey, local advertising is expected to grow at a rate of 3.6%, right, from 2015 through 2020. And as you can see here, traditional media is certainly not going away. It'll certainly stay steady, but it's mobile that's really what's on the rise. With mobile growing stronger than ever, it only means that there's new ways to get even more targeted. Today, I want to provide you an overview of the new definitions of local marketing and take you through a couple of use cases that remind us that geo-targeting is still as relevant as ever. So local targeting, is it all really the same? Local targeting, or geo-targeting, has been around, as we all know, for a very long time, from targeting people who are in circulation of a newspaper to the now always-on mobile consumer. So mobile devices have really created some new ways to geo-target, and I want to talk about that for a brief moment. So geo-targeting can now be taken down to a GPS level, right? So the location that's on your device phone can now be used as a way to know that you're in proximity of a location and be able to send out some real-time advertising. Beacons are another new form of technology, and I'll talk about that again in a little bit, that leverages Bluetooth and apps that are on your phone to be able to push out location and to be able to push out specific advertisement to you at a point where you are. And then there's always hyperlocal, right? That's about creating radius or drive time analysis based on a very specific local area around a particular either brick and mortar or location. So with these new forms of geo-targeting, there are certainly some notions around how it can be leveraged. Some say in order to really achieve effective hyperlocal or location-based targeting, it requires first-party data. So you know the user's behavior and you can then send them a message based off of exactly what they're doing. Others say where it's most optimized is certainly in the retail sector, but really the truth is it's actually all geo-targeting, and it's still an effective approach even to grow brand awareness or location planning. And to be successful at it, you can use rich third-party insights like the Simmons Local data set to understand the brand profile, key consumer targets, and cross that against a myriad of data like lifestyles and behavioral information to create promotional events and grow awareness amongst your target audience. So what I'd like to do now is let's break down these terms, since really they're all just geo-targeting with a twist. So by definition, let's talk about that. Geo-targeting, it's the practice of customizing an advertisement for a product or service to a specific market based on the geographic location of potential buyers. And this is by definition by techtarget.com. So first off to the left, this is kind of that hyperlocal geofencing approach, right? The idea of targeting a digital or addressable ad, even direct marketing within a very specific footprint to a very specific audience. It could be a walking distance around a location or even a radius. Location data in the middle, that's really more of the digital targeting term, where you're using the mobile GPS proximity location to be able to push a notification based on where you are. And lastly, on the right, as I mentioned, is this newer concept called beacons. So in this idea, it's this combination of Bluetooth, low energy technology is what it's called, and a mobile app that you might have on your phone. The two come together, and it's actually a little bit more precise even than GPS, that as you're entering a location, it'll push a notification to your app. So you're walking into Target, and if they have beacon technology and you've got your Cartwheel app, it might push a particular offer, a deal, to you at that very moment. And the Simmons Local product, by definition, is designed to deliver exactly that, geo-targeted insights so you can locally target the right consumer in the right place with the right message. So what I'd like to do is really take a few moments to talk about the definition of how we create the Simmons Local product so it can achieve these larger sample size and local markets across thousands of attributes to build segments and find them locally. The way we achieve it is through our GeoBehavioral Methodology, which means that there's two different components that come into play as we build out our study. There's leveraging the NCS data, which is that rich national consumer study that asks questions all about attitudes, behaviors, psychographics, that many of you already know of. And then there's this household level data set that we are aggregating at a geographic level from some of the sources you're seeing right here on the screen to be able to build a geographic profile. The two pieces are what come together in order to build out our local data set. So let's take a look at that a little bit further. So first step is building this geographic profile, right? It's built out at a block group level. We're leveraging over 200 data points made up of demographic, behavioral, brand consumption information to create what we call almost like a profile or a fingerprint of every block group in the US. And for context, there's about 200,000 plus block groups in the US. So we're starting at a fairly granular level, leveraging a lot of the data points you saw from the previous slide in order to create kind of a profile of what does a block group really look like across all these different characteristics. Then we move over to the Simmons respondent level national consumer study. We're looking at all the respondents and we're looking at how they responded to the similar 200 types of questions that we're already asking in the NCS, similar to what we've profiled at a block group level. And based on the respondents' response, they're getting a score based on how they responded in relation to every one of the block groups in the US, and then ultimately they get assigned. So if I were a respondent in the Chicago market, I would always get assigned to the block group of where I live. But then I also might get assigned to a block group that I look very similar to that could be in the St. Louis market or in the Florida market. And what we're doing once we've assigned them, we've got now this really rich, robust block group level insights. We start doing weighting in order to create these estimates and market projections that you come to see in our Simmons Local study. And we're doing this weighting on a number of variables, some of which we're showing you here, like Hispanic origin, race, household income, and household size. Additionally, Simmons Local takes into account a couple other characteristics to really ensure that as we bring our data over and we're building these projections at a local level, we're doing some additional steps to ensure that it truly represents that local market. First off would be a step we call retail cleaning. This is the process of ensuring the data that carries through from the respondent in the NCS represents the market that they're being assigned to. So again, like I said, as myself an example, if I'm a respondent in the Chicago market and I shop at a grocer, here in Chicago we have one called Jewel Osco. It's an Albertson brand. And if my profile as an NCS respondent looked very much like a block group, say in the Florida market, in Florida, what we do through the retail cleaning process is ensuring that all the characteristics of my response as a respondent to the NCS is reflective of the retailers and restaurants that are within that local market. So for example, Jewel Osco in Chicago might look like Publix in Florida. So that retail cleaning process is really important to ensure that local context. Additionally, there's local TV programming, which is where we're looking at Nielsen data to ensure that the NCS networks and data that we're collecting from the TV side are truly being placed in the right markets and making sure that that station really has a presence in that local market. And then there's also specialty retail products, and this would be anytime we might measure products that have a regionality, we want to ensure that when we're building out our local studies, since we build them out for every TV market, that it's truly representative and appropriate for its given market. Now let's take you through a few case studies that showcase how geo-targeting is still as relevant and important when targeting a message. Jen's going to take us through our first case study. It's going to be focused on the presidential election. Jen?
Thanks, Margot. Our first case looks at the current election along with our political personas segmentation, so let's dive in. This election season has been an interesting one, to say the least. This round of candidates has rewritten the rules for running for president with new and different ways of doing, well, pretty much everything, including reaching voters. Pop culture is not just on the sidelines anymore, but rather plays an important part in the election process. So some of the ways that the candidates have reached out to different segments of voters has been vastly different between, let's say, the Trump and Clinton camps. Hillary's reached out via music to reach some voters that may be outside the realm of the usual Democrats, while Trump, on the other hand, has eschewed mainstream media in general, focusing instead on social media, including Twitter and Facebook, to get his agenda out there. In this section of the webinar, we're going to use Simmons Local and our political persona segmentation to dig a little deeper into voters that make up some of the segments that each candidate may want to reach by using these tactics. Then we'll look at what motivates them, what media they're using, where they can be found geographically, and look at this both at the market and at the zip code levels. So first, let's take a look at the political persona segments overall. Political personas is a proprietary Simmons research segmentation system that helps users better understand the mindset of the American voter. The segments were created using key demographic and psychographic data variables available in the Simmons National Consumer Study, and they were then refined by observing respondent voter registration and political party affiliation status to create mutually exclusive segments of political personalities. The segments provided detailed understanding of key voter segments, demographics, responsiveness to various media platforms, and attitudes and opinions on important political issues and social trends. In this segmentation system, there are a total of 10 segments, 4 each for Democrats and Republicans, and 2 that are unregistered. So for this example, we're going to look at 2 segments that are party aligned, but perhaps not so strongly as some of the others are. These 2 segments are those that may still be undecided and may be swayed by candidates' media usage or other influences in the time between now and the election. The 2 segments we're going to explore more in depth are the left-out Democrats and the mild Republicans, which are 2 of the groups that the candidates may want to reach out to as they are slightly outside the core constituencies of the party loyal. When we look at the 2 segments across the entire U.S., we can see that these are 2 very different groups, obviously. Some points that stand out are, so the left-out Democrat segment is younger, with an average age of 38 versus 43 for the mild Republicans. 33% of the mild Republican group is ages 45 to 54. That's the highest concentration there. Left-out Democrats skew much more racially and ethnically mixed than the mild Republicans, with 2/3 of the group being Black and slightly over a quarter Hispanic. The mild Republicans are 91% white and have very little ethnic diversity. In terms of education, the mild Republicans are a more educated group, with 41% having graduated college or more, compared with 17% of the left-out Democrats. To tie this up, the household income for left-out Democrats average is about $59K, about half that of mild Republicans at $123K. So now let's look a little bit about what's going through their minds. It's interesting to note that the pop culture statements, well, pop for the Democratic segments, while statements about work, control, and perfection are those that stand out for the mild Republicans. Looking at some self-described character traits also gives us some interesting insights. The Democrats use terms like egocentric, vain, self-centered, and narcissistic, refined, gracious, sophisticated, dignified, brave, courageous, daring, and adventuresome to describe themselves, while Republicans selected options like stubborn, hard-headed, headstrong, obstinate, efficient, organized, diligent, thorough, intelligent, smart, bright, and well-informed. Let's suffice it to say that neither group is lacking in a positive self-image. So if we look at our social interaction statements, which are some of these ways we use to see how people are influential to their friends and peer groups, the top left-out Democrat statements are, people often copy what I do or wear, I'm good at convincing others to try new things, and I like to introduce people to each other, which shows a trend towards cooperation and sharing, while the top statements for the mild Republicans are, my friends and acquaintances look to me to organize our activities, I'm often chosen to be the spokesperson in my group, and I'm good at leading discussions, illustrating the sense of leadership that goes along with the self-image opinions that we discussed just a moment ago. Media attitudes of the 2 are very different too. Our left-out Democrats are interested in and pay attention to ads, while mild Republicans say, whenever commercials come on, I change the channel, and I don't like advertising in general. It's not a bad fit, actually, for the current media plans of the two candidates. With healthcare being another hot topic, the attitudes here are, again, quite different. Mild Republicans tend to say, I don't go to the doctor unless I'm very sick or injured, and insurance companies have too much power. While the left-out Democrats prefer expensive, advanced, or branded medicine, will pay anything to look younger, and will take medicine at the first sign of pain and discomfort. In terms of personal financial responsibility, 73% of mild Republicans say that financial security after retirement is the responsibility of each individual, while only 54% of left-out Democrats agree with that statement. That said, the left-out Democrats are more likely to be asked their advice on financial matters by friends and associates than are the mild Republicans. So now let's take a look at their social media habits, since social media is playing such an important part in this election cycle. So 87% of the mild Republicans are social media users, in contrast with 75% of the left-out Democrats. The mild Republicans over-index for or are more likely to use than adults 18 plus most of the social media sites measured in Simmons, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and YouTube. Interestingly enough, our left-out Democrat segment is 41% more likely to be on Twitter. In terms of attitudes about social media, mild Republicans are more influenced by others, saying things like, I pay attention to ratings and reviews by others, I would rather read others' comments, I am more likely to purchase based on social ads or friends' recommendations, while left-out Democrats, as we saw earlier with the social interaction statements, are the highest indexing for I often invite or send requests to connect with others on social websites, and also index high for posting ratings or reviews for others to read. So in terms of traditional media, there are some contrasts as well. This overview of media usage and involvement shows us a few things. In the first set of charts across the top, we see that the mild Republicans are more likely to be heavier users of most media, although the left-out Democrats are higher users of radio. The second set of charts shows us a little deeper view. It's not only usage, but also how involved they are with media. In this case, our left-out Democrats are very involved with magazines and more involved with TV than their mild Republican counterparts. Their heavy usage of radio, however, does not translate into being more involved with it. So the mild Republicans' heavy involvement with the internet suits the current non-traditional media plan of Mr. Trump quite well. And finally, the last set of charts is a way of looking at how receptive the groups are to advertising in general across all media options. In this case, as we saw with the media statements previously, the mild Republicans are less inclined to be receptive to ads than the left-out Democrats. So diving a little deeper into their usage of media, we can look at how much time they're spending on various devices across a given week. When compared with the adult 18 plus segment in black, we can see that the time spent across media for the two groups is fairly obviously divided between traditional media for the left-out Democrats and digital media for the mild Republicans, with the exception of time spent using the mobile phone for the left-out Democrats. Now, given the demographics of this group that we looked at earlier, the phone may also be the internet device of choice for them, thus explaining to some extent why the time spent using work and home PCs is lower and mobile phone usage is higher. So now let's take a look at where they're located, using some maps to visualize the data. This slide and the next one show an overview of all the political persona segments for each party across the U.S. and which ones have the highest preponderance in each media market. It's interesting to see that our left-out Democrats, in pink, have a big swath of the South and Southeast, but also some pockets on the West Coast. They're also there in Columbus, Ohio, Chicago, and Detroit. The super Democrats are concentrated about where one would expect them to be, the Northeast and Northwest, along with pockets in San Francisco, Denver, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. Similarly, we can look at our Republican segments across the entire U.S. as well. The patterns are not entirely dissimilar, though the groups are different. Our mild Republicans, in yellow, here are located in the Northeast, along with some of the more liberal strongholds in Denver, Minneapolis, D.C., Austin, and Seattle. The ultra-conservatives have a pretty firm grasp on the Bible Belt, while the uninvolved conservatives are the strongest in Salt Lake City. The Republican Green traditionalists are mostly in the Southwest, but pop out also in New York City. So when looking at our groups across the U.S. gives us this big picture of who they are. With Simmons Local, we have the ability to drill down to the zip code level to go from macro to micro and explore your target segments. So since Pennsylvania is one of the important swing states in the upcoming election, we wanted to take an up-close and personal look at one of the media markets in that state and see how our two segments look within a local market. When we look at Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas, we can see that there are more zip codes that swing to the mild Republican side rather than the left-out Democrats. That's left versus right. But it's interesting to note, though, that the zip codes where left-out Democrats have have a much higher index than the mild Republican strongholds. Also, there are some zip codes where both segments are firmly ensconced and others where there are neither. So who are our segments in Pittsburgh, and how similar are they to their national counterparts? If we drill down to look at who our segments are within the Pittsburgh area, the demographic profile of the two groups shows an interesting contrast. Our left-out Democrats group here is highly African American, young, and skews female, while our mild Republicans target is very white, a little older, has a fairly high income, and is about equally split gender-wise. And how are they different, or the same, in terms of media? Again, looking at the media usage and involvement of our segments, this time on a local basis for Pittsburgh, we do see some similarities to the national profile, with mild Republicans being higher users of most media, save radio, but the left-out Democrats' media involvement in magazines is almost double that of the mild Republican segment. As we also saw on the national level, the ad receptivity for our Democratic cluster is a bit higher than that of the Republican cluster. So as we think about how we can reach these two segments within the Pittsburgh market, Simmons Local enables us to drill down to some specific media targets where our segments are more likely to be spending their time or where there is a significant audience to be found. In terms of local TV news, the two segments have similar viewing patterns and both under-index for all the local options. Our left-out Democrats are likely to get their news via radio, while mild Republicans are likely to rely on the internet for current events. But when we look at some of the other ways of reaching them via local media, there are some interesting differences. It is not unexpected to see that in Pittsburgh with a very African-American left-out Democrat segment that they're watching BET and TV One. But Adult Swim might be an unanticipated channel where you can find them. For a mild Republicans group, they would seem to be fairly enthusiastic Penguins fans, but also have relatively mainstream cable propensities, enjoying Food Network and the Discovery Channel. The radio formats mirror their cable choices as well. In terms of social, as they were nationally, both groups over-index for social media. The channels differ slightly, but these are the ones where you're most likely to find the segments hanging out and sharing, whether it be lunch pictures or comments on the upcoming election. So let's wrap up what we've seen in this case study. With an election season that is vastly different than any we've ever seen before, the power of Simmons Local and the political personas helps you find and target the exact group of voters that you want to reach in any geography. Second, using the vast amount of demographic, psychographic, and consumer behavior information within Simmons Local, you can understand your segments within any geographic area to effectively plan and target your precise message to those who are likely to respond. And finally, by drilling down into specific media behaviors within Simmons Local, you can find out, for traditional and non-traditional media, where your segments are spending their time and reach them with your message. And now I'd like to hand it back to Margot for a quick overview of our new mapping capabilities, some of which we've just seen in this case study.
Thanks, Jen. Yes, all the mapping visualizations that we're showcasing today are now available to our local subscribers, which we're very excited to share with you. It's a new service available, which is ESRI's ArcGIS Online. So for those of you who might not be familiar with ESRI, they've been providing mapping capabilities since 1969 across a number of industries. Certainly got their grassroots in the government and utility space if you think about how geographic and boundary-centric they are. ESRI provides mapping software to help you understand and visualize data and make decisions based on the best information. It's what they call a Geographic Information System, or GIS, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with that term, which lets users visualize, question, analyze, and interpret data to understand relationships, patterns, and trends. These are some of the capabilities we're going to be able to bring to you as a user of our geographic data. Two of the key components, both of which will be supported by your Simmons team, which we're super excited about, are the ArcGIS Online and Maps for Office. So as you can see here, these are just some of the capabilities that we're going to be able to bring to you that are certainly above and beyond some of the things we were doing lately. Things like plotting points and shading on multiple data layers of data, including things like drive times and radius, labeling, including adding additional data visualizations. So you can be able to do a shaded map and then include things like pie charts and bar charts additionally in your map with some of the ArcGIS Online capability. And again, it's going to be supported by your Simmons research team, which is incredible, and there's an access fee that covers all of your users. So however many Simmons local OneView users you've got, we'd be able to support them all. And now I want to share with you another case study leveraging geo-targeting and mapping analytics to find the right area for new web rooms, which is a new trend in the brick and mortar space. So this case study is actually going to explore Blue Nile. They're traditionally an online exclusive retailer in the high-end jewelry space, and how they crossed over to create a combination online and offline shopping experience. I do want to say that we didn't work with Blue Nile on this project, but merely are using this as a great example to showcase geographic research for site selection. But first, let's talk about the evolution of retail, right? It's really come a long way. What started as corner markets in the early 1900s kind of evolved into this concept of a general store, which was really a catch-all, to what we saw kind of evolve into strip malls, which then became specialty stores, where there was a store that had different types of things all kind of lined up together. And then if you fast forward, along comes the internet, and that completely changed the game with online exclusive retailers, as we all know, like Amazon, eBay, and even specialty shops like Blue Nile, for example. So at that point, right, nearly every retailer jumped on the bandwagon to offer merchandise online as well, right? So there's these new online retailers. Everyone wants to make sure their merchandise is also available in that online environment. And if you can believe it or not, TJ Maxx actually only started selling online in 2013. But now if we fast forward to today, we're at the age of this combination shopping experience, right, where online becomes part of the retail experience, and even vice versa, where exclusive online retailers are starting to open locations so that they can bring their merchandise and connect directly with the consumer. So in this case study, we will look specific at this turn of events for Blue Nile, a high-end jeweler, and how using behavioral targeting to build a segment and ultimately use it to define key opportunities and create basically these new web room retail experiences. But first I'd like to explain the concept of a web room, right? As Blue Nile calls it, some people also coined the term clicks to bricks retailers. So the idea behind this that Blue Nile was going for is really about designing a store that can connect with consumers directly to answer things that, say, it's not as easy to do directly when you're an online exclusive, but yet offer all the things that people who shop at online-only retailers are expecting, like that price, like the easy payment. So all the way the payments are being handled in the stores are through tablets and mobile devices. It's a smaller storefront than their counterparts that are also in the jewelry space, and they've designed it to be non-commission sales based, so it's really about the connection to the consumer. So when you're making this kind of purchase, you have a way to kind of interact with the consumer that as an online retailer you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So even the likes of Amazon are taking a similar approach, which I'm sure you've all heard, that they've started to create their own brick and mortar bookstore locations, but at a much smaller scale than, say, Barnes & Noble. So how local plays a part in this is where there isn't consumer data to build custom segments, so leveraging first-party data. This is where third-party research can really be used to find like-minded buyers, which in this scenario we're going to identify as upscale clicks to bricks. So this upscale clicks to bricks segment is from our Simmons retail shopper segmentation, which breaks down the mindset of consumers, their shopping behaviors and preferences into one of 6 types. And upscale clicks to bricks are knowledgeable consumers who buy in-store or online, always carefully research purchases online first, shop around, and compare prices before buying. And that's the audience that we're going to use as our surrogate for this Blue Nile case study. So let's explore this upscale clicks to bricks further. So demographically, this type of segment is a high income with about 20% in the range of 100 to 150K. They're educated, they're homeowners, and just over half of them have children. As we said, this segment is online savvy and knows how to do their research, which is likely why they would say shop at a Blue Nile, assuming they felt that they were really getting a good value. So these are the types of people we've probably all seen, maybe you and I are one of them, who have their mobile devices handy when they're in a store to see if they can find a better deal at Amazon. The internet is certainly their go-to for information overall, but also within media. So what we're seeing here is that a group like this is 26% of this segment is reading fewer magazines, they're reading fewer print newspapers. So this is the group that's really kind of converting very heavily to online media as well, and even likely their TV is being streamed versus traditional TV. And additionally, here we can see that this segment is a heavy online shopper, even for atypical items like automotive products, which they're nearly 2 times more likely to buy online than the average adult. Grocery items, even insurance at an index of 171. So to shop online for diamonds isn't a far stretch for this group. They know how to do their research before making a purchase to know they're getting a good deal, so they are buying online with confidence, basically. But now let's explore this upscale clicks to bricks segments across the U.S. by media market by using our Flex Market study to find where are there pockets of these segments and see how that plays out against the web room locations Blue Nile chose. We can see that out west, especially in the Northwest, there is certainly a high index for this particular upscale clicks to bricks segment. When we layer on their locations, we can see Blue Nile, being a Seattle-based company that they are, chose a location in the Northwest in Portland, which isn't a stretch. Like we can see on the screen, the darker blue represents areas of higher index to find our upscale clicks to bricks, as well as they position themselves out in the East Coast in some of the trendy malls like Tyson's Corner in Virginia and the Westchester Mall in White Plains, probably to attract more of that influential savvy shopper. If we start to now break this down and take a closer look at, say, the Portland DMA, we can begin to see where are the pockets of upscale clicks to bricks in relation to the location that they chose as their retail location, and begin to build a geo-targeted strategy around the area. So in this visualization, the darker the areas, it represents the higher the index. The lighter the color, the less likely they are to find their target consumer. So if you think about where the mall is situated in relation to this DMA, you certainly see the bluer areas. So they are certainly positioned in a location hotbed for the upscale clicks to bricks. When we start to then zoom further in and get a closer look to the mall, and we select an area within a close proximity, so say a 10-minute drive time, so we're really trying to hone in and get to people that are really within the area, we can start to build out a hyperlocal target as we want to deliver a unique message that's within reach of our target audience. And furthermore, when you layer on top of that the projected target population, you see the larger dots are higher target population counts versus, say, the smaller dots on the screen. So within our 10-minute drive time, we can see that not only are they hitting areas that have high population targets for our audience, they are also index high for finding our target audience. So it's a good mix of not just index, but also high projected target counts. And additionally, when you click on any of with the ESRI mapping capabilities, you can select any geography on the map, and it'll showcase any of the underlying data from Simmons Local that I would have pulled from one view. It could be any additional data points or measurement to drive further insights about the geography. So it's a great additional feature we've got there as well. Now we can also easily isolate the drive time area with the ESRI mapping service and extract those zip codes from our analysis and create a custom area of these zip codes for further analysis to either identify promotional tie-ins and other behavioral or attitudinal data to inform your messaging strategy. So now we can truly isolate the area that we want to really hone in on, and not only that, but extract that underlying data from it, bring it back into OneView, and be able to do some further analysis and help plan out our strategy. We can also use local TV programming for the Portland market to inform our TV plan. Since, as we mentioned in the stats at the start of the presentation, traditional media is certainly not dead in local advertising. These are just some of the programs that upscale clicks in Portland are watching. And with our very specific drive time area, we can explore things like addressable TV to target only the households who say fit our segment and message on these particular programs. So this is a case study really that represents a hyperlocal analysis where Simmons data and mapping can come together to showcase a consumer target, where they can be found, and where they are really in proximity to a desired location. And now that same segment can actually be used with a geo-targeted area for either digital activation strategy or even, say, addressable TV. So to sum up our presentation, these examples demonstrate the power of geo-targeting using locally focused data and how the insights can be used from defining consumer targets to understand behaviors of the local market, to market evaluation using mapping services like the ESRI ArcGIS tools we're offering that help showcase the relationship of a market to the consumer, all the way through media planning for local TV or activation, all of which are key applications of the Simmons local data sets. And with that, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we'd love to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Margot and Jen. Now we answer a few of the many questions received throughout today's session. Please feel free to use the chat box on your GoToWebinar panel to submit any additional questions you would like to ask our presenters at this time, and we'll filter through them as we go through a few more. But let's start with our first one. Margot and Jen, is there data available for the Miami market?
Yeah, I'll take that. This is Margot. Absolutely. So within our local study, we actually provide all TV media markets. So we have 209 since we combine Palm Springs and LA together. So every market, TV media market, we've got a study for it.
Very nice. Thanks, Margot. Another good question, Jen and Margot. Can you elaborate on how this data can be used for activation purposes?
Oh, that's a great question as well. So this is certainly a capability that we've been exploring as of late, where any of the Simmons attributes that are within the data set can be used for activation purposes. So through our relationship with Experian and their addressable targeting capabilities, we can include and overlay our own Simmons research data on top of there. So any audience you build out of Simmons can be overlaid and then be used in the digital ecosystem and addressable TV through Experian's capabilities. So we're very excited to be working with them and offer our Simmons data in that way.
Next question. How do I get access to this ESRI mapping software, and when will it be available?
Great question. So it's already available today, and all you need to do is really reach out to your account team to explore that. We've got all the systems set up in place, and every single user that is a Simmons local user on your end would be available to get access to the ESRI mapping capabilities. So we're really excited to be able to bring this to all of our local clients who are doing geographic analysis, and it's out there and available today.
Next question, and this is a fun one. Are the color schemes on the ESRI map customizable?
Great question, and the answer is yes. So not only can they be customized to a client-specific color scheme, so if you have a very specific color that you need to have represented, it can be that specific, and they have a lot of color ramps available as well to choose from.
And this is going to be our last question of the day, folks. We saw that you show local TV data. Where is this coming from?
Oh, great question. So we're very excited that we do actually have Nielsen's NSI, so Nielsen Station Index data that flows through, and we can provide access to all clients that are Nielsen subscribers. So what that enables you to be able to do is get down to the local stations that are within the given market and be able to understand against any of the targets that you might be building off of Simmons Local, what their local TV programming might actually look like, what they're watching, what they're engaged in. And that's available through every single one of our local markets.
Well, we're at the end of the session, so at this point, I'd like to thank our speakers, Margot Weisz, Jen Olson, and all of our attendees for joining today's session.